The medieval world was one of stark contrasts. Light and shadow danced. Great cathedrals reached for the heavens, their spires pierced the sky. Yet beneath them, life was often brutal. Forests were dark, deep, and dangerous. Wolves roamed freely, so did outlaws. Castles stood as grim sentinels. Their stone walls were cold and imposing. They guarded secrets, secrets of power, ambition, and betrayal. Lords and kings ruled with iron fists. Their word was law. Justice was often swift, sometimes it was public, a spectacle for all to see, but sometimes justice needed a quieter hand. In these times, power was absolute. A king's displeasure could mean ruin or death. Not all enemies could be faced openly. Not all sentences could be declared in court. Some threats were too delicate, some secrets too damaging. To deal with these, a different method was required. A method that operated beyond the public gaze, far from the courts and the scaffolds. This was a world of whispered commands, of clandestine meetings in shadowed cloisters, or in the dead of night, where deals were struck and fates were sealed silently. The air itself seemed thick with intrigue. Tapestries in grand halls hid listening ears. Letters carried coded messages. Loyalty was a currency, but betrayal was a constant threat. Noble houses vied for influence. Clergymen played their own games of power. The common folk mostly tried to survive. They knew the powerful had ways to make problems disappear, quietly, without fuss, without a public trial. This was an accepted, if unspoken, part of life. The strong did what they could. The weak suffered what they must. So who performed these grim tasks? Who were these agents of silent retribution? They were not the common hangman, nor the headsman with his gleaming axe. Those men worked in the light of day. Their roles, though grim, were known. These others were different. They moved like ghosts. Their names were not recorded in official chronicles. Their deeds were buried, deep, like the bodies they sometimes left behind. They were the unseen hand of power, the secret executioners of a brutal age. Their story is one of darkness and of the true nature of medieval authority. The secret executioner was a special tool, a weapon in the arsenal of kings and powerful nobles. Their role was precise. It was deadly. They were to eliminate threats quietly, without the noise of a public trial or the spectacle of a public execution. Their allegiance was to their master alone. Often this was the monarch, the king himself, or a prince, perhaps a powerful duke. This loyalty was absolute. It was sworn in the deepest secrecy. To betray such a trust was unthinkable. It meant certain and probably agonizing death. Why were such figures necessary? Medieval politics was a viper's nest. Rivals lurked everywhere. A troublesome baron might plot rebellion. A courtier might know too much. A spy from a hostile kingdom needed silencing. Public trials could be messy. They could stir up unrest. They could reveal sensitive information. Sometimes the accused was too powerful or too popular. A public execution might make them a martyr. The crown needed another option, a way to remove these problems. Cleanly, permanently, and with complete deniability. This was the secret executioner's domain. Their mandate was simple: carry out the sentence, leave no trace, or if a trace was needed, make it look like an accident or the work of common bandits. They were not judges. They did not weigh evidence. They were instruments of a will that operated above the formal laws, or perhaps, more accurately, beside them. In the shadows where official justice could not or would not reach, their existence was a testament to the raw, often brutal exercise of power. A power that needed no public validation for its darkest deeds. These individuals were carefully chosen. They had to be discreet, resourceful, utterly ruthless, and completely loyal. They were not common thugs. Though they might employ such men if needed, they were specialists in the art of silent removal. Their work ensured the stability of the realm, or so their masters believed. They protected the crown. They maintained order, or at least the order desired by those in charge. They were the ultimate deniable asset, the dark servants of a sovereign's unacknowledged will. Their work was dirty, but to many rulers it was essential. The public executioner was a familiar figure, though often shunned. He lived in the community. His role was known. His work was a performance, a grim ritual, meant to instill fear, to demonstrate the power of the law. Scaffolds were erected in town squares. Crowds gathered to watch, the headsman's axe, the hangman's noose. These were symbols of justice, public, undeniable. The condemned had their last words. Their crimes were proclaimed. It was a harsh theatre of punishment, designed to keep the populace in line. and to show that justice, however brutal, was being done. Secret executioners were the antithesis of this. They were phantoms. Their identities were closely guarded secrets, known only to their masters and perhaps a very select few. They did not perform for crowds. Their work was done in stealth, in hidden places, under the cloak of darkness, or in plain sight, disguised as something else. A sudden illness, an unfortunate accident, a disappearance without a trace. There were no proclamations, no last words, just silence and a problem solved for the one who gave the order. The very nature of their operations demanded absolute secrecy. If their existence became widely known, their utility would vanish. They could not operate if they were recognized. Their masters, too, relied on this secrecy. Plausible deniability was paramount. If a powerful rival died mysteriously, suspicions might arise. But proof, that was another matter. The secret executioner ensured there was none, or none that could be traced back. This was their primary value: effective, silent, and untraceable. A ghost in the machinery of the state. This stark difference highlights two faces of medieval justice. One was public, brutal, and ceremonial. The other was hidden, efficient, and utterly clandestine. The public executioner reinforced the law. The secret executioner served the raw power that often lay behind it. One was about maintaining order through fear of visible consequence. The other was about eliminating threats that could not be dealt with openly. Both served the interests of those in authority, but they walked vastly different paths, one in the light, the other in the deepest shadow. Who would undertake such a perilous, grim profession? Recruitment into these shadowy ranks was itself a secret. There were no public advertisements, no guilds for secret executioners. Candidates were likely identified, carefully vetted, and approached with utmost discretion. They needed a unique set of skills, nerves of steel, the ability to kill without hesitation, and crucially the capacity for absolute silence. They had to be loyal and perhaps desperate or possessed of a peculiar moral code, one that allowed for such actions. One surprising source of recruits might have been the clergy. This seems contradictory. Men of God tasked with saving souls, not taking lives. Yet some clergy were highly educated. They understood poisons, they knew anatomy. They had access to all levels of society, from the royal court to the peasant's hovel. A confessor might overhear dangerous secrets, a learned monk might be loyal to a patron. A prince-bishop wielded temporal power and might need enforcers. The church itself was a powerful institution, with its own interests to protect. Why would a clergyman agree? Perhaps coercion? Or a belief in a greater good? They might see it as removing a cancer from the body politic, a necessary evil to prevent wider chaos, or to protect the true faith. Some might have been ambitious, seeking favor or wealth. Others might have been fanatics, believing they served God's will by eliminating his enemies, or the enemies of his anointed king. The moral complexities were immense, but the medieval mind could often reconcile deep faith with acts of terrible violence. Other recruits might come from military backgrounds, soldiers skilled in covert operations, or spies, men already accustomed to danger and to operating outside normal rules. Some might be criminals, offered a pardon in exchange for their deadly services, their past lives erased in return for unwavering loyalty. The key was finding individuals who could be trusted, who would not talk, and who could get the job done without leaving a trail. The selection process was likely ruthless. A mistake in choosing an agent could be fatal for the agent and for their master. Section 5. The Silent Blade and Subtle Poisons. Methods of Clandestine Justice. The methods of the secret executioner were vastly different from those of his public counterpart. There was no need for the spectacle of the axe or the prolonged agony of the wheel. The goal was not public deterrence, it was quiet elimination. Speed, silence, and deniability were prized. A dagger in a dark alley, a garrote wire pulled taut in a silent room. These were quick, efficient, and could be mistaken for common robbery if the executioner was skilled and the scene carefully managed or left entirely clean. Poison was another favored tool. It was subtle, it could mimic natural illness. A skilled poisoner knew his craft. He could choose a substance that killed slowly, or one that struck like lightning. Arsenic, nightshade, hemlock. These were well known in the medieval pharmacopoeia and often difficult to detect. A contaminated cup of wine, a tainted meal. Death would appear to be from colic or a sudden fever, leaving few questions and fewer answers, especially if the victim was already in poor health or of advanced age. Staged accidents were also part of their repertoire. A fall from a horse, a drowning during a river crossing, a hunting mishap. These required careful planning and sometimes accomplices. The aim was to create a believable narrative, one that deflected suspicion. The more natural the death appeared, the better. This was an art form, the art of making murder look like misfortune. It required intelligence, foresight, and a cold, calculating mind. The secret executioner was not just a killer, he was a strategist of death. The choice of method depended on the target, the circumstances, and the wishes of the patron. Some targets needed to vanish utterly. Others needed to die in a way that sent a subtle message to those who understood such things. But always the primary concern was discretion. The executioner's own survival depended on it, as did the reputation of his master. Torture was generally avoided. It was noisy, it left marks, and it risked the victim revealing secrets or the executioner's presence. Clean, quick, quiet. These were the watchwords of their deadly trade. Section 6. Erasing the deed, the art of vanishing evidence. Once the grim task was complete, the work was not yet over. The secret executioner had to erase all traces of the act and of his own involvement. This was as crucial as the execution itself. A single mistake could unravel everything, leading back to him and, more dangerously, to his master. So the disposal of evidence was a critical skill, one honed through practice and necessity. Failure was not an option when one dealt in such high stakes and with such powerful people. If a body had to disappear, there were many methods. Rivers were common choices. Weighted down, a corpse would sink and might never be found. Or if it surfaced, it could be far downstream, unrecognizable. Unmarked graves in remote forests or desolate moors. These were also used. Quicklime could be employed to hasten decomposition, and render remains unidentifiable. Sometimes the body might be hidden within castle walls or in forgotten crypts, places no one would ever think to look or dare to search. More than just the body, other evidence needed attention. The weapon used had to be disposed of or cleaned meticulously, any bloodstains eradicated. Witnesses, if any, had to be silenced or be part of the conspiracy. The executioner often worked alone to minimize risk, but sometimes a small, trusted team was necessary. For more complex operations, every detail mattered. A dropped button, a footprint, a careless word. Any could be a fatal link in a chain of discovery. So they became masters of meticulous removal. The psychological burden of such work must have been immense. Constantly looking over one's shoulder, trusting no one, living a life of perpetual secrecy and violence, the need to be hyper-aware, to plan every move, to anticipate every contingency. This created a certain kind of mind, cold, detached, highly disciplined. The secret executioner was not just a killer, he was a ghost, adept at vanishing and making others vanish too. His success was measured not by what was seen, but by what remained unseen and unknown. Section 7. Phantoms in the public consciousness, fear and social status. Officially, secret executioners did not exist. They held no public office. Their names were not on any payroll, at least not one that would ever see the light of day. They were, by design, invisible. This meant their social status was non-existent. In the formal hierarchies of medieval society, they were outside the system, yet their impact could be profound. They were the ultimate insiders, privy to the darkest secrets of the powerful, while remaining complete outsiders to everyone else in the world. If people suspected such figures operated, perception was driven by fear, not the revulsion reserved for the public hangman. He was a known quantity, a pariah, but a visible one. The secret executioner was something else, a nameless, faceless threat, the embodiment of unseen danger. Rumors of their deeds would fuel paranoia, mysterious deaths of important people, sudden disappearances. These would be attributed to dark forces, to the king's long-hidden arm. This fear itself could be a tool keeping potential troublemakers in check, without a single overt threat being made. They were not celebrated, nor were they openly condemned, because to acknowledge them was to acknowledge a terrifying reality. That justice could be arbitrary, that power could kill silently and with impunity. So they remained in the realm of whispers, of folklore. Perhaps parents scared children with tales, of shadowy men who came in the night for those who disobeyed or spoke out of turn. This created an aura of dread surrounding not just the executioners themselves, but the rulers who might employ them. Their social standing then was one of profound ambiguity, unknown to most. Feared by those who suspected, and utterly dependent on their patrons, they were not nobles, nor commoners in the usual sense. They were a class apart, defined by their secret function. Their reward was not public honor, or land, or titles. It was payment, often substantial, and the continued protection of their masters. As long as they remained useful and silent, their existence was a chilling testament to the hidden machinery of control in a world already rife with peril. Section 8. Echoes from the shadows, tales and rumors of secret justice. Concrete historical records detailing secret executioners are scarce. By their very nature, their work was meant to be unrecorded, undocumented, yet whispers and anecdotes persist in the margins of history, in chronicles that hint at deaths too convenient, too timely. Consider the fate of Arthur, Duke of Brittany, nephew of King John of England, a rival claimant to the throne. Young Arthur vanished in 1203. While in John's custody. Officially, his fate remained a mystery, but rumors flew that John himself or one of his loyal agents had murdered the boy silently, effectively. Or think of the many political rivals in the Italian city-states. During the Renaissance, which overlapped the late medieval period, poison was rife. The Borgias became infamous for their alleged use of cantarella, a secret family poison, to dispatch cardinals and political opponents. While not always state executioners in the formal sense, the principle was similar. Powerful families using clandestine means to eliminate those who stood in their way. These stories, whether wholly true or partly legend, fueled the belief in such hidden agents, waiting in the shadows. Consider a hypothetical scenario. A powerful baron grows too bold. He amasses arms. He speaks openly against the king. A public trial might ignite a civil war. His followers are numerous and loyal. So, a quiet word is passed from the king to a trusted chamberlain who knows a certain discreet individual. Weeks later, the baron falls ill, a sudden violent sickness. His own physician is baffled. He dies within days. His lands and titles revert to the crown, or are given to a more loyal subject. No proof of foul play, just misfortune, or so it seems. These tales and countless others like them created an atmosphere where the possibility of secret executioners was always present. It was a dark undercurrent beneath the surface of medieval life. The lack of definitive proof for specific individuals or organizations does not mean they didn't exist. Instead, it speaks to their success, their ability to operate and then melt back into the shadows, leaving only fear and unanswered questions. Their legacy is one of chilling efficiency and the enduring mystery of power's hidden face. Section 9. Reflections in a Dark Mirror, Medieval Power and Hidden Truths. The existence of secret executioners, however shadowy, tells us much about medieval justice and the nature of power. It reveals a stark reality that formal legal systems were not the only means by which justice or retribution was delivered. There was a parallel track, one that operated outside the courts, beyond public scrutiny, accountable only to the will of the powerful. This was the realm of raison d'etat, where the perceived needs of the state or the ruler trumped all other considerations, including the due process of law. It highlights the absolute authority wielded by many medieval monarchs and high nobles. Their power was often unchecked, their ability to command life and death profound. If a ruler deemed someone a threat or an inconvenience, they had means at their disposal to remove that person without needing to justify their actions to a court or to the public. The secret executioner was the ultimate expression of this untrammeled power, an instrument of a will that recognized few, if any, limits. This is a sobering thought for any student of history. The medieval mindset itself played a role. Life was often precarious. Violence was endemic, and the lines between justice, vengeance, and political expediency were often blurred. In such a world, the idea of secret, decisive action, taken by a ruler to protect his interests or the realm, might not have seemed as outrageous or as morally reprehensible as it does to modern sensibilities. It might have been seen as a grim necessity in a dangerous and unstable world where enemies were numerous and threats constant. Ultimately, the story of secret executioners is a dark mirror, reflecting uncomfortable truths about how power operates, not just in the medieval past, but potentially in any era. It reminds us that official narratives and public displays of justice do not always tell the whole story, that behind the facade of law and order, other forces may be at work in the shadows, carrying out the unacknowledged will of those who hold the reins. Their silent, deadly work serves as a chilling reminder that the pursuit of power can lead down very dark paths indeed, leaving only whispers and the quiet chill of fear.